Hello and welcome to today's session. My name is Nadia Davis and I am a customer training manager here at EBSCO. Our session today is part of a series. This is our first session in Maintaining EBSCO Discovery Service. And the focus of this session will be on managing your searchable content. Just a little bit before we start, please note that this session is being recorded and the recording may be shared with others who have registered to attend the session. It will also potentially be made publicly available as a training resource. And if we do share this recording, your name will be suppressed to protect your privacy. If you have any questions throughout the session today, do feel free to use the chat or the Q&A panel to ask. I'm happy to stop and take questions as we go along. And a copy of the recording, as well as the slide deck in this presentation and the handout that I've created as well will be sent to you after the session a little bit later on today. So objectives from our session today, it's my hope that by the end, you'll be able to identify content partners for EBSCO Discovery Service, enable searchable metadata, select your content in holdings management, and locate help and support materials. Now, I just wanted to take a brief moment to mention about the importance of maintenance of discovery. So when you first get EDS implemented, you usually will have an implementation project manager. And at that time, we will ask you for things like your current subscriptions, anything that you subscribe to with EBSCO, and also your non-EBSCO partners. That can include databases, that could include direct eJournal subscriptions, that could include eJournal packages. So essentially, that kind of content we would enable for you as part of that implementation. But moving forward, we do need to make sure that we are maintaining that content as well. So just bear in mind as we go through this series of sessions that it is a process of continuous improvement. And just remember, we need to update, we need to maintain, and we need to review our content. So in today's session, we are focusing on maintaining the searchable content, so your article level indexing. We will also touch a little bit on your holdings and we'll talk about some catalog updates. In our second session, we'll be touching a little bit more on our linking, and then we'll have a deep dive into our holdings management. Now, I have created a checklist, which I will send out to you after the session. So I'm just going to take a quick segue to show you this. This will talk about how often should you make these changes, or when should you go and review or make any updates. So as a general cadence, I would say every 2 to 3 months, you could always check to see, has anything been updated? Have we had any changes to our subscription? Again, if you know that your subscriptions have changed, then it's a good idea, of course, to come in and make sure EDS is updated to reflect any changes to your subscriptions, whether you've started subscribing or whether you've stopped subscribing. So that's really what we're focusing on in this series. I'm also going to touch on catalog updates, like I mentioned as well. So there are different ways that you can load your MARC records into Discovery. So just a bit of a refresher around that information as well. So I will send this checklist out to you after the session. Okay, so our session today is maintaining EDS, and we are focusing on enabling our databases, our datasets, and our catalog records, our searchable metadata. So I wanted to just touch a little bit here on datasets. So with datasets, I like to think of this as the C. So all of this C here is our datasets. It's our searchable metadata that is provided by different vendors, as well as open access providers and also your EBSCO databases. Now, any publishers or vendors who supply their content for searching are known as content providers. Now, in this series of sessions, I'm going to touch on things like setting up links, but in today's session, we're really focusing on this C. We're really focusing on our data sets and how to enable that searchable content and maintain that content in our discovery. So moving on from there, before we start, there are a couple of systems that you'll need to manage your content. The first thing is EBSCO Admin, and I'm hoping everyone does have access to EBSCO Admin, but if you don't, please let me know after the session. I'm happy to help you sort out your account. I am just going to put in the chat the URL. So eadmin.ebscohost.com is the admin portal, and this is where we go to maintain our searchable content. A couple of other additional things that I would recommend as well would be access to EBSCO Connect. Now, again, I do hope everybody, if you are maintaining Discovery, has access to EBSCO Connect through the login. There's a lot of content available that is only available for people that do have an account. So I will recommend this guide here, the EDS Partner Database Information Guide, and also this one, what content is included in my EDS profile. Now, this top one here, it is only available through that login, so that authenticated version of EBSCO Connect. The third thing I would recommend is just making sure you have your EBSCO Discovery Service link available so you can test out any changes and make sure that they have worked appropriately. So 3 things before we start. Okay, moving on from there, we are now going to head over into the steps that we need to take to update and maintain our content. So a couple of things. We've just started subscribing to a new resource. Now, the resource I'm going to be looking at today is a vendor platform called Emerald. So I have some data sets from Emerald. So what I want to do first of all is just find out, are they a content partner? Do they supply their metadata to EBSCO that I can then enable for my users to search? So this is where we can visit EBSCO Connect. And again, this is why you would probably need to have a Connect account. If you haven't got an authenticated Connect account, I'll show you where you can go to create one. So here in the top right, there is a sign in button. And if you don't have an account and you are an administrator, just go ahead and click on request an account and get that set up. There is a lot of really good features of having that EBSCO Connect account as well. One reason is we can create cases. If there's any technical issues directly through Connect, we can view previous cases and any updates on cases as well. And we've also got things like our community groups or our listservs here as well. So really good features in addition to, of course, the documentation that's also available. So the thing we're going to be looking for here is our content providers. And I'm just going to do a slightly different search for that. Partner database information is probably the best search for this one. Now, as I mentioned, this one will require a Connect login. So I'm going to put this link into the chat, but if you don't have a Connect account, it will prompt you to sign in or create one. But I would say if you're new to EDS, if you're new to the content, this is a great place to come. It's going to show you a lot of information, but what we're looking for here is the EDS content file. Now, this is going to download a spreadsheet and it's going to show all the different vendors that supply their searchable metadata. And you'll notice that we do update this fairly regularly. So I would always bookmark the link that I've sent in the chat and just download the spreadsheet when you're doing your updates, because I think around it's every maybe 3 to 4 months that we would go ahead and update this. So better to have the most recent version. So this is quite a large spreadsheet, but we're looking for Emerald. So we're going to do a Control F. So just Control F from here, and we're going to look for Emerald. Okay, so we can see that Emerald is available here. So if it's on the spreadsheet, it's going to mean that yes, they do supply their searchable metadata to EBSCO. And we're going to see some information here. We've got the database name, Emerald Insight. We have information about the link, the different collections that they supply to us. So we can check to see are our collections here, the unique database code. If they're a mutual customer only, in this case, no, so we can enable the data set for searching, and also how often the databases are updated and so on and so forth. But really what we're looking for is, are they available and what collections are here? So now that we know that, we are going to go over to the admin platform and we're going to go ahead and turn on that data set for searching. So this is really the part that you need to pay attention to. This is really where we're going to go and manage that content. So we know that they're there. So all we're going to do is navigate to EBSCO admin. And I did put that link into the chat window for you. So if you have an account and you log in, it should look very similar to this. Now, what you'll need to do is make sure you're in the right group. Usually your group will be a main group. And then in your profiles, you want to find your EDS profile. So EBSCO Discovery Service, usually in the brackets here, you'll see EDS. And then from here, what we want to do is go to the databases subtab. So all of our searchable metadata is enabled or disabled through this databases subtab. Now, just a note here as well, you're going to be seeing a lot of different content. I'm going to go to the drop down here in a moment and go to disabled. One thing I will just mention is that you've got this little setting here, new content automatically enabled, and mine is set to no. This is a recommended setting. And the reason we set this to no is because if you saw how large that content partner spreadsheet was, every time we have a new partner come on board, if you have this set to yes, we will automatically enable that data set for you. And while that sounds like a great idea, it just means you might get a lot of different data sets that are not relevant to your subscriptions, and it may cause problems with relevance ranking. So we do say here, set it to no, and then maintain it so that you know exactly what your users are searching and it's more specific to your audience. All right, so that's basically a little feature there, but what we want to do is go into the drop down and go into the disabled section. So we know Emerald is a content partner. So all we're going to do in here is search or browse for Emerald. Now, I do have the big list from here. There is a search or browse option at the top of the screen as well, but it is on my first page from here. So I'm going to go ahead and just go to on, scroll to the bottom of the page, and I'm going to click on submit. So now I'm going to go back to the drop down and go into the enabled section. And now I should see Emerald has been enabled for searching on my EDS profile. Now, one other thing I'm going to mention here is that you'll notice it has put that right at the top of the list. I actually like to come down to the bottom and make it order it alphabetically. So I do like to do that. I just like to see things in alphabetical order. And I do need to make sure I push the change to EBSCO. So we submit and then we push. And that is because it's going to push that across to the EDS platform here. Now it can take a few seconds to come through or a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to hit the refresh up here just to refresh my page. I might hit it again. It can take about 1.5 minutes or so to come through. So let's have a look on the front end. We've turned on Emerald. Let's just do a quick search. So this is your searchable metadata. This is that article level content coming from those different content providers, data sets, and databases. So let's just do a quick keyword search here. I'm just going to use pedagogy. And I've got my results. Now, what I want to show you here is in the filters, it opens up over to the right, and you'll see I have a couple of filters applied. I'm just going to get rid of my catalog here, and I'm going to come down into the content provider facet. So everything that we're searching, let me just apply that search. So I'm getting rid of just my catalog records. Right, here we go. Here's my list of content providers. So we'll see here arranged by hit count. We've got things like complementary index, academic search, ultimate, and so on. Once Emerald is applied and we can see it has come through, our data sets are here. So for my keyword search of pedagogy, I've got around 3,000 results, and I'm just going to update and apply that filter. So now my records will be coming from the Emerald data set. So that's it. My content is now on. That is as simple as it is. In our next session, I'm going to talk about links. I'm just going to briefly show you here for this record. You'll notice that the data set is listed here. It's Emerald Insight. I also have a drop down here. So I haven't set up a link yet. However, I have got holdings enabled already in holdings management. So that's why I'm seeing a full text finder link resolver link. And I'm also seeing a request this item through interlibrary loan because I don't have a link, a custom link assigned to this yet. But I've still, even though I haven't set that up yet, my users can still access or request that item. So in our next session, I'm going to talk about how we set up our links. But you will notice, you might be wondering why I'm getting some links there. And that's simply because my account already has that content kind of enabled in holdings management. But you'll see for other records, I've got request this item through interlibrary loan because full text is not available. So that is basically it. Very, very simple. Now, In the reverse of this, if we were maintaining our content and we stopped subscribing to something, we would just follow the exact same process. So we would come into EBSCO admin, navigate to our EDS profile, go to the databases tab, and in the enabled section, we would locate the data set we want to disable and we would turn it off, click submit, and push the change through to EBSCO. And that is as simple as it is. The second part of that would be making sure we go to the linking tab, which I'm talking about in our next session, and disabling that link. And of course, holdings management and making sure we're deselecting there as well. Okay, so that is the process for enabling our data sets. If there's any questions on this, please let me know in the chat or in the Q&A. Okay. So moving along, this is really just a workflow, just mentioning that I do find it helpful to test that on EDS, make sure that that content provider is appearing in that content provider facet, and you can sort of view the records from there as well. Now, another thing I wanted to briefly mention here were indexes. So I've talked about a data set today, but if you're looking or reviewing your databases subtab and you're finding some indexes in there, you might be wondering, what are they and why are they included in my EDS profile? So the indexes allow EDS to cover content that's not part of a data set or a content provider database, for example. So some example indexes that you will see will include the complementary index. So this is really for primary publishers. They're not necessarily a database like EBSCO or Gale, but we want to make sure that that metadata is searchable. So these publishers can include people like Wiley, Springer, Sage, or Taylor and Francis. Another index that you might see enabled as well is the supplemental index. So this will include enhanced metadata for journals and magazines that are not available in what we call our foundational indexes, like academic search or business source. And then we have our academic search index and our business source index. So we consider these to be kind of our foundational indexes. So even if we have content across different providers, we may find that that metadata is included in these foundational indexes. So if you don't subscribe to an academic search database, we will enable that index for you. It's obviously not full text, it's just the index, but it provides that searchable metadata, and the same for business source. We also include the ebook index as well. And if you are a Gobi customer, we also include a Gobi ebook index. So again, it is metadata, it's searchable metadata, and it's there for users to be able to search across. And then, of course, we would set up the links for the full text access. And then our last option is just our subject indexes, and these are pretty straightforward. We include in EDS some databases that don't work directly with other discovery services. So that can include subject indexes like ATLA and CINAHL. So of course, if we enable that content, then the subject indexes are included within your searches. Now, on the content provider spreadsheet that I showed you, there is a tab next to our partner database content called EDS indexes. So if you're interested to see what would be included in those foundational indexes, you can view the publisher details from here and what kind of content is covered. So complementary index, of course, will include people like Springer, Wiley, Taylor and Francis, and so on. And you'll find other publishers here as well. Okay, and you'll find your indexes will also be just in that databases subtab, and you'll usually see them here. For example, complementary index, I might have the supplemental index, and so on. Okay, so moving on from there, I also now want to touch on custom catalog records. So these are your MARC records. And generally, some libraries do include the MARC records as a load. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes people have the library separate and just a link out to the discovery layer. This is really talking about having the custom catalog records, your MARC records, within the EDS search results. So if you do load catalog records, these are usually done via FTP, so file transfer protocol, or via a web client. And this is usually a manual load. So every so often when you've made a change to the catalog, you would upload those changes through FTP or a web client directly into the EDS platform. If you also have an ILS vendor, that supports the Open Archives Initiative Protocol for Metadata Harvesting, otherwise known as OAI-PMH, we can set this up and it's an automated mark load. So there's sort of two ways we can get them in, manually or automated. So again, this is a maintenance session. So you've already had your catalog set up and you're just maintaining those records. So which option will depend on your current subscription and your current setup. I have provided links also into the relevant help guides from here. But let's take a quick look at this. So if we were using a manual load, this is an example of using a web client. And generally what would happen is EBSCO would send to you your username and a password. The username is usually the catalog code. Usually there's a catalog code. It will start with cat and a sequence of characters at the end. And then we would give you this password. Our mark or catalog records will be available in zip, GZ, or tar-GZ, and the files must be in a compressed file. So there is a great help guide around using the web-based web client version to send your catalog or institutional repository data through to EBSCO. So I've just got some screenshots in case you're interested to see how this might work, in case you're new to updating your catalog records in EDS. This is an example of the web client. So you would basically log in with that username and password. We would provide you with the URL for this web transfer client as well. This is what the web client transfer would look like. And you'll see over to the right, I have a catalog ID. So that's usually the catalog code. We also recommend, if using this, that you log in using an incognito or a private browsing session. When you come to the next option, you'll have your ability to either upload your files as a full rebuild or an update. Generally, it's an update unless a full rebuild is required. And just note that a full load can overwrite any existing catalog records. So from there, what you would do is select your option and drag and drop your mark files. Once you've done that, you would then log out of the web transfer client, and this is really important, and then the transfer will happen and those records will be loaded. On the other hand, we also have file transfer protocol. It's a very similar process, except you would have access to something like an FTP client like FileZilla. But very similar process, we would provide you with the host details, your username, your password, and you've got your update or your full folder. And then once all of that happens and everything goes through, you will usually receive an email notification when the load has occurred to say, look, the load's happened, it's ready to go. You can actually log into EBSCO admin, navigate to site group maintenance in the top right, and there will be a tab called catalog status, and you can actually see the last time your catalog was loaded. It will also show you things in here like if any bad records, good records, or anything that's flagged. Usually, if there's any issues, our catalog team, will usually indicate that to you as well. And that's it, that's your catalog loads. So where do catalogs sit within EDS? So if we come back to EBSCO admin, if you do have a catalog loaded in the databases subtab in enabled, you will see it here. So you'll see I have a catalog, and you'll just notice here in the brackets that this is that unique catalog code for this catalog. And of course, once those records are loaded, the user would then be searching on the platform. And if we go into our filters and if we go into the content provider facet, just need to go and update that, we would then see our catalog appearing as a content provider here. So then we would have our mark records on the screen from there. This is a demo site, so I'm not sure how good my catalog records are going to be, but here you go. We also can integrate with things like RTAC. So if we have RTAC set up, we could see things like our availability status. You'll notice that my account is not live, so I don't have the RTAC there. But generally, we would have that sort of RTAC there saying it's on the shelf, out on loan, or whatever the case might be. We can also set up lookup tables to show locations in different libraries as well. And we also have some link outs from here as well. So request this item or a link perhaps to the item on the catalog itself. So that's just sort of what a catalog record would look like once it's been imported. Okay, so that is managing your content, including your catalog records. Now, I do have a very brief workflow overview. So, in our next session, we will focus more on holdings management. So, I'm going to touch on this in the workflow. So, over here, if we're managing our content for searching, we need to go to EBSCO admin, customize services, and the databases subtab. If it's a new subscription, we would have hopefully checked that content partner spreadsheet, identified that yes, they do supply their searchable metadata. And if they're there, we would enable that content, click enable and submit, push the changes to EBSCO, and just test that on EDS to make sure that the records are coming up in our searches. Now, what if the content provider is not available? So we've looked at the content provider spreadsheet. It's not there. Their metadata is not available for searching. What do we do then? So in this case, we would still need to make sure that we select it in holdings management. And like I said, next session we'll focus on this in greater depth, but I am just going to do a quick segue now to show you. So if we've checked that content partner spreadsheet, they're not there. What we still need to make sure that we do is go to holdings management. And what we would then do is navigate to our titles or our packages, depending on what level we want to enable or what our subscription might be. So we have our vendors, our packages, and our titles. Usually it'll be one of these two. We would then search for the package name. Now, in this case, we know that Emerald is a content provider, but just to show you, we would then find the package and then we would go ahead and we would select that. Why we would do that is for two reasons. One, it's going to make sure that we have a link set up, a target link through Full Text Finder link resolver. And the second reason is to make sure that it is available in our publication finder. So you'll notice when I search for pedagogy, my first result here is a placard and it's coming from our publications, which is this in my account here, A to Z title list, which is publication finder. So even though the metadata is not there, if that journal is appearing, I still get that kind of item level option from here. So again, we're just making sure that that content is there. I'm not going to cover too much about integrations in this session, but another tip would be if you've got different platforms that are not available in that content provider spreadsheet, you can add them as an additional resource in here, and you could have a link to that platform. So these are just options moving forward if you find that you haven't got that content easily searchable. And you might also notice on my demo site, I have this little carousel of ebooks. You could utilize this as well to go out to those different platforms. So it's a nice kind of visual way of linking out to different resources. Okay, so that's pretty much the content and metadata and a little touch on holdings management. If there's any questions, let me know. But just also to follow up, if you've cancelled a subscription or you're not renewing something, again, you'll need to make sure that you disable that searchable content within the admin platform. Okay, so I've had a question saying in EBSCO admin, there are a few records with trial. Do we have to do anything to these records when the trial is over? You don't have to if you do have a record with trial, and it's probably a profile or a group, I would say. It just means that the trial is done, and if you did try to launch it, it just wouldn't go anywhere. So it can be confusing. You can absolutely delete them out if you want to, but it's not going to really affect any kind of end user stuff. Once the trial's done, there's no sort of access after that point. I don't think I have any in my demo site that I can show you, but quite often you'll see them as either here in a group, you might have a trial group, and then you might have in the profile some trial profiles. So yeah, generally once that trial ends, there's no kind of access after that point. So I hope that helps. And if you want further information, feel free to reach out to me directly as well, and I can take a look at it for you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so I hope that was helpful. That was the first part of our series. So managing your searchable content. The second session is coming up, and that will cover your linking. So we'll talk about custom links, we'll talk about the full text finder resolver links, and we'll talk about things like API links as well. In session 3, we will touch more on the holdings management side of things, a bit of a deep dive into that. And in session 4, we'll talk about understanding EDS usage at what we should look for in our usage reports. And then session 5 is a new session, which will talk about apps, integrations, and customization for Discovery. So feel free to visit our Zoom portal at any time. If you find any of these sessions, feel free to register. We will also advertise these through our monthly newsletter as well. Okay, and that takes me to the end of the session. So if there's any questions, feel free to let me know. And you can always reach out to me at n.davis@ebsco.com. All right, thanks very much, everyone. I will send you a copy of the recording and the slide deck a little bit later on. Thank you.